Let's
Yeah,
do
let's
it.
do it.
We're recording. Hello.
Beautiful. We're online.
Hey, how are you?
Good. Yeah, super good. Yeah. So maybe, yeah, um, no, it's good. Like the weekend I was going in, it's early in the season for me with the production, right? Especially for wholesale to summer item. And so before the weekend, I was stressing a bit. It seems like one supplier fell through, another one fell through, and it seems like we're missing out. And I went to a friend's place at a bar now, and we talked about it. And I was kind of ranting. And as I go home, 10 o'clock, another supplier calls me from Turkey, and they're like, "Hey, we've seen your product, we love it. We're gonna make you a prototype. Can we work together?" I said, "Okay." I send the files, no, the
Cool,
non-disclosure
cool,
files,
cool.
non-compete form, 3D drawings. Monday, I have a meeting with them. They have numbers ready. They're ready to produce. So, like,
Oh,
you know,
awesome. Awesome.
yeah.
Awesome.
So
Is this for the hammock or is this for something else? Is this
yeah, so the quote I make for the hammock. This is my first product that I'm trying to like get this whole supply management chain thing going, right? I want to run one product fully before I load other products. But that's what I talked to them too. I was like, okay, like we can do this first one, see how it goes. But they have a really big production line, and this is something I ran into that. Sorry, I didn't want to start off and ramble, but I'm excited.
no, no, no.
Um,
I go through the same thing, so enjoy it, bro.
yeah. So long
Enjoy,
story
enjoy.
short, they're like, okay, we'll stop our supply chain if you guarantee like a certain amount of sales per year, but you can break it up. So of course, like furniture is heavy for me to buy, right? So if I buy 100 pieces or 800 pieces, we're immediately talking $500,000 investment, which is a lot. And so they were like, hey man, you start slow, we can reserve the materials, put the price on it, we split this difference, then we can hold stock, ship 50 or 100 at a time, and if you don't make it the first year, we can take it to the next year. So it was amazing just to like really like this small business owners understanding each other of like, yeah, this is what we
No,
need to do, is like
totally. Especially as you're transitioning from, I think there's a few things going on. I was really thinking about our last conversation, really enjoying it and thinking about what we talked about. And I see also you're transitioning from solopreneur to entrepreneur, where you were doing most of your products handmade and custom, and now you're going into production and working with other teams. And I found a lot of really important highlights there that were fundamental. Now, before I continue on, I wanted to ask you a question. Is this adding another production or manufacturing facility, or are you still working with the people in China?
both.
Both. Okay.
Yeah,
Okay. Okay.
yeah,
Are you
yeah. So I'm learning a lot, especially about this supply chain management too, that like
okay?
I'd love to get into in detail, but like this is also ours. So
Yeah.
and I
No.
thought after our last conversation, I thought like, hey, this was a lot of me talking. So like I
there
want to
was
hear
there
I
was
want
a
to hear
lot of
your
you
story, man.
talking. There was a lot of you talking instead more than me.
I don't know, felt
Yeah,
like it.
good. Well, yeah, I mean that's part. I love to chat too, as you can tell. So it's been a super pleasure meeting you, and I think getting to know you was an important part of the first step. As we start coming together. So we're doing the same thing you're doing with the hammock. We're doing with the video.
Yeah.
So we've been working on this for a long, long time. I mean, we did our first presentation with a wonderful project called Song Kernel, and we started doing video presentations and all those different things and stuff. And I was just like in front of the video, I was like, like, dude, I can't, dead. We can't send this video, take 45, take 45. I'm like,
I love that.
so, so that's a little bit where I started. And with the language, I started a little bit earlier, creating um, we tend to, as business owners, well, there's a couple of different things going on. I wanted to touch on the subject as we get into things. Having a lot of small business experience and working with technology so many years, you're really transforming the organization, internally and externally, either the business processes or the internal business process or the external communication strategy with your clients and with your vendors, with pretty much everything. I mean, that's just like, I started out making websites way back in the 90s, and then I saw how I think it was GoTo back in the day started with the pay-per-click, And then really I started to foresee how this was changing the organization. And from there, from marketing and sales, which I still do, I passed over to operations as these new tools are transforming the organization. I mean, it's just basically, it's just incredible. So really helping people in that area, and really just, looking at over all this time, is about innovation and how we adapt to changes as they occur, and how we incorporate them into the business, and also the mindset. I find that, a lot of people in the initial conversation, everything's fine. And as soon as you close the deal and you move into most people are looking at me and are looking at the process as a cost center, when really it's just you're working on the profit center. And the current philosophy of liberalism, economic liberalism, and we're talking John Smith here, is to, I mean, obviously you've got competitive advantage, and you also have the frequency and the velocity of the transaction as a growth mechanism, and as a standard to ensure the continuity of the business and continuous cash flow, and so that you can grow and scale as the economies grow, and as the population grows, because this also starts creating jobs, more and more jobs with this constant growth. So creating jobs. Well, like for example, the Proteus, I think it's the Proteus cartel. This is way at the beginning of the light bulb. They started manufacturing light bulbs that would last.
The actual light bulb.
Yeah, exactly. There's a light bulb somewhere in the States, and that's lasted like 100 years. So
I've read about this.
Exactly.
It's in the fire station, yeah?
At the fire station. Exactly. So the bigger guys, I think Phillips and a few others, you got to double check this information. It's been a while that I looked at it. They sort of came together and they formed a cartel where everybody would send their light bulbs to this cartel to check that it wouldn't last more than 10,000 hours, so that they guaranteed the cycle of production and continuous growth. So
Right.
income
That's what they call planned obsolescence, I believe, right?
Exactly. And let me, I got relax a little bit too, because you get all, I'm like a little bit in a rush to get ready for the meeting. So let me dial it down. So basically what's happening is, it's sort of a model. It's an infinite model built upon a finite space. So basically back then they just didn't understand
finite space,
that.
you mean our planet?
Exactly. Until we get off planet and we start bringing in asteroids and all that stuff, it's finite, but the model is infinite. I mean, kudos to John Smith, and I'm not here to break the system. Please, no revolution or anything like that. But we've reached a point.
A little bit.
Well, tweaks and adjustments.
Yeah.
Tweaks and adjustments. So basically what we saw is that, and I think this is the crisis that we're going through in the planet today, with the economy, with all these bubbles that are bursting, that supposedly the Fed is supposed to control against, which they can't, and they're above the government. I mean, that's when I saw Bob Bernanke and they're asking him, he was president of the Fed back in the day, and there's this video of him, and he's in front of the Congress, of the U.S. Congress, and they asked him what they did with the $2 trillion he got for TARP money, and for rescue for the subprime, and basically he's like, well, I don't have to tell you guys what we did with that, So basically we see, and part of our research, and that's what we've been working on, part of Buena Vista Social and myself and with our team of people, is understand a little bit what's happening. It's just more and more bubbles, more and more financial, economic crisis, inflation. I mean, obviously wars, that's crazy. I mean, that's just crazy in this day and age.
Yeah, it's not of this time, huh? It doesn't feel like,
Yeah, hey, everything is super complicated, so let's start throwing bombs at other people. I mean, that's just crazy time. So what we see is an economic model that worked really well to granulate the richness and the power of the government, because it was all feudal system and it was a zero-sum game with the Golden Triangle and slavery and all that crazy nonsense going on, which was way back from the past. It wasn't anything new. It's just been happening for a long time. It still happens and all those different elements, but we're talking at a macro, we're talking at a majority level. And it, with the competitive advantage, it's separated and it disconnected the power and control of the government and the feudal system and created created the bourgeois class. I mean, which is people starting to generate wealth and participate in government and distribute the decision-making process and the wealth. So if you look down really deep, you'll see that that Adam Smith is primarily a philosopher, and his gift to the world is giving us all this abundance that we have that's based on this competitive advantage and being competitive and all those different elements, that the frequency of the transaction and the velocity of the transaction to ensure the security of the organization. What I find is that the system worked great in scarcity, but now in abundance, the efficacy, the efficiency of the model is starting to deteriorate because we're no longer, the conditions under which it started out are no longer the same. I mean, now we are in abundance and we're just looking for more and more in abundance disconnected from reality. So that's a little bit, that's what we're researching through BBS and building a healthier narrative that's more connected with the reality. And also just some really quick patches, like really simply, most people bleed that competitiveness and that power system internally into their organization. So you start working with somebody, everything's good and dandy until you close the deal, and then you're just a cog in the machine, and basically your treatment totally changes, because now you're getting paid, so they own you, and they base your relation. Most cases, these are people learning out. These are not highly educated. It could be highly educated. What we did find is that people that have worked in team environments and corporate environments have a better understanding of teamwork. There's still the problems of power and control, which are sort of eliminated now with email. Everything is trackable. I mean, there's nothing to argue about. There's nothing to discuss. And normally that clears things up. There's obviously, people learning management skills and delegation, and there's a whole bunch of different complexities there in that area that we look to help and participate. So just practical solutions like updating the narrative, working together much better, and also exploring together with other people better ways to do things. I mean, so that's, and really what we see is a change, and like what it's going to be, I don't know. I mean, that part I haven't gotten to yet, but where it's neoliberalism in a financial and in an economic sense. I mean, there's obviously that liberalism of choice and decision-making process, which gets carried over into politics and group dynamics, specifically focused on the economic. It's just basically, we are not in the time of scarcity now, we're in the time of abundance. So we need a new model that fits in with the reality of exactly what you said. I mean, that's all they got right now. And we're just killing everything off, cutting down trees, destroying ecosystems, and just doing all sorts of crazy stuff, like I'm looking at the North Koreans, and I don't know how much you know about rocketry, but there's this, like, some of the rockets, when they go up, there's like a red puff of smoke that looks like it's going to kill you. And yeah, it's going to kill you. There's some really bad, naughty shit that people are just still using, just total disregard for our environment, for where we work, for families, for friends, for just basically work, money. And there just really isn't that. I mean, it helps. It's like grease, so we just find a lot of people that are unhappy where they're at, what's going on. I mean, obviously we have the work from home movement. We have the entrepreneur movement with liberty. I mean, I've worked from home 20 years. It's a different life. So there's a new world coming. So big, really, really big picture, our focus is there. And so part of SBO, the idea with SBO was Buena Vista Social licensing the language to SBO United, which is this videos from BBS, which is from our creation, and create an antenna to reach out to small business owners, twofold. Small business owners in the States represent like about 80-90%. We got to check the number. Every number I look at is different, slightly different. So Depending on the report that you're looking at, small business owners represent 80 to 90% of revenue and like 70 to 80% of jobs, so it's really helping, especially during the pandemic and all these difficult times, is helping that area of our society, the economic part of our society, to have a healthier action, and better well-being and quality of life, which, like we talk about, I mean, Fabian is out there. He's an avid surfer. So his business is really based around his personal life. So he has a construct that is much more healthier than just work, and business. I mean, this has been happening for a long time. We're all really aware of that. But the idea is to not only bring successful people like, hey, I made $1 million, or I made $20 million to the channel and to SBO United, and introduce people, but to introduce people that, hey, I have a quality of life. I may not be making $20 million yet, or whatever, 500,000 may be a lot of money at this point, but I am tractioning and I am executing correctly the proper steps to go from solopreneur to entrepreneur, monetization, building relationships, connecting with people. So really, just show a balanced example of reality, not just success. Success is, I'd like to talk about that topic some more with you during our call today. I think success is a little bit more complex than we imagined it to be from when we started out. And I just posted something to the group. There's a really interesting video on the concepts of space development and how failure is a part of the process, and all those different elements to do new things and explore new lands, and also to the known, that there's the unknown that you're exploring, that you're doing you, and then there's the components that and they have to work well, and you have to make sure that you do the operations on all those elements. So there's that internal day-to-day stuff, which you already know, and then there's the R&D part, which you're exploring you, and then there's the external competitive environment, which doesn't have to be competitive, can be competitive. You can force competitiveness, but you can interact with people in your industry. The business is there's a big pie, everybody's participating in it, and just build different relationship with the people that you work with in that area. So I think those are a couple little tidbits that I wanted to talk on the show today. And just to wrap up, I wanted to talk with you about the business model as well, so we can get that sort of ironed out and look forward into the future as we seek to build value. So that's a little bit the data dump. I know it's a spoonful.
No, that's good. I'm registering. Yeah.
No,
So
I know we're on the same page. Because we're constantly looking with who to interact. The first time I presented my project, nobody understood what the hell I was talking about. Dude, I mean, it was like, I get responses like, hey, dude, that's just science fiction and stuff like that. It's also finding the right audience.
of course, yeah.
So like we were talking in the previous show, we connected with Fabian about 2.5 years ago. And the idea for us to connect with him was we're looking for people. I think the easiest way to understand this is, and a couple more minutes and I'll wrap up. Go ahead. No, if you have any questions, let me know. Let me pause here. But if you have any questions, up to this point, I want to talk a little bit about the agent of change and the right person to talk to for your projects, for your business, for anything that you're doing. You got any questions or no? Yeah.
No, I was listening to your story.
Okay.
If you want to continue, I'm taking in all this information, and it's good. Like,
it's working.
I think exactly like you say, it's a spoonful, but in order for us to communicate, and you have I have the time, I can take the data, I can let it sit, and we can have a better conversation. So yeah, take it all in.
That's what let me plug in here. That's what I understood when I met you. The first time. I mean, perhaps our narrative was not as well matured as it is now. Our ability to you remember our conversation, so it wasn't as mature as it is now. And being able to explain it and share it with others, the idea primarily was to find the right type of people that we can have the communication. And the easiest way to explain this, I think you're going to understand right away. I mean, there's 100 ways to explain it. There has to be a certain level of reflexivity in an evolution individual as to how they connect with the present, to understand that there's really two things. There's the language and there's our common agreement, which is a subset of reality. It's not reality itself. So reality is happening itself, and we have as a society, we have with economic liberalism, democracy, and all these different elements that we construct a body of common agreement so that we can articulate together as a society. So we can come together and we have this common agreements, which is like now with Fabian, we are developing that common agreement and sharing information, sharing thoughts so that we create a common ground so that we can exchange information. And this really interesting guy, Abraham Maslow, he's got some really crazy psychology stuff. You know, I haven't.
Mr. Maslow's need pyramid. Yeah.
Exactly.
Sorry, I just fully interrupted you there. Yeah,
No, dude. I love it. I mean, the idea is to have a conversation, so pop on in anytime you want. You know, there's certain parts where we're going to explain in more detail our stuff, you know, but there's always conversation. I would think that's the idea, is the exchange. So the hierarchy, from what I understand, and again, there's a couple different versions as you drill down really close, was developed by a couple of marketers from his work. So the cool thing about Abraham Maslow is that he decided to focus on healthy psyche. So he didn't on sickness or anything like that, but his focus is on the psyche. I haven't spent too much time on his work itself per se. I mean, I've read it a little bit and some really crazy ass stuff. It's really cool. It's really cool. The hierarchy of needs, what he's talking about is these basic constructs that we have as we are at different stages of life. You can jump because you can mentally evolve. But say, for example, you're at the bottom. The most important thing, I interact with a lot of people on the street. I've talked with, I don't know, 20, 30,000 people. You know, so and you talk with somebody on the street, and these people are trying to have conversations where go get education, go do this, go do that. They're hungry. They don't have shelter. They're exposed.
They're missing those basics, huh?
They're missing the basics. You can't have that conversation with them. Although in general, I came across somebody on the street the other day. He came in to ask me something. Young guy, well dressed, but very, very low income. I don't know if homeless or not. We didn't get into that, but really, really tough street situation with a couple of bags and stuff like that, where he was able to have a highly evolved conversation with me as far as respect, listening, and different elements. So he was auto-transcendent. He was at the top. He was living at the bottom because your mental schema and reality are two different things. I mean, you could be struggling at the bottom with a higher concept of mind as you build up, or you can be totally drowned by the necessity of your situation, which is the majority of people. I come from there. I've worked all my life. I've worked plenty of jobs and did a lot of stuff. I mean, we worked hard and everything good. You know, that's just everything's good. So you have these different elements. You have, I think the second one or the third one is security. Then you have the fourth one, which is, if I remember correctly, I haven't looked at this data in a long time, so it's a little bit on the border of my knowledge. You have self-actualization once you've gone, which is the point where, at the top of the pyramid. And what's happening at self-actualization is you have all your urgencies. You have security covered, you have food, you have relationship, you have a home, or you're renting an apartment, or you have shelter, and you have some self-validation, and you're starting to explore yourself and grow. What's really interesting on that, and you can find it on Wikipedia, in English, I think, Spanish, I operate a lot in Spanish. And let me throw this monkey in the wrench. Your language is your culture is your operating system, and your language is your programming code. So basically, some of this information that I couldn't share in Spanish because nobody could find it was in English, hasn't been translated yet, and wasn't part of the culture, or wasn't part of the information available to that culture. So it really depends a lot where you're at too. But regardless of that, that was just a monkey in the wrench, or a wrench in the monkey. was before he died, a couple of years before he died, he discovered auto transcendence. Okay, so you're up to date with that, right? Or is this
Yeah,
new? Okay.
yeah, I'm familiar with it. Yeah.
No, 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 no. So basically, auto transcendence is once you go beyond that pyramid and you have a better connection with the present and reality. So you've got pressing issues that are occupying your mind at one point that don't allow you, that take up your bandwidth of input and processing capability, just like a computer to reverse anthropomorphize the computer, which comes from us. So it's basically like us. It's just a practical explanation of how we think and how we interconnect with the modems and the networks and all those different elements as humans. So your bandwidth is more focused on the present. You're more reflexive. You're more understanding. You're writing better to the database. Your memory is getting much better. Your talent is getting much better. You have a better connection with yourself and reality. You haven't abandoned the ego. The ego is still there, but you have evolved beyond it. And so putting everything together, I consider you to be auto transcendent in how we speak and what you're doing and the communication that we're capable of sustaining beyond the communication inside the pyramid that is, depending on where you're at, it's just throttled to the lowest common denominator based on your needs. So when the first time I presented, I'm like, okay, I'm presenting to the wrong people. This was, let me share with you a little bit. We are, I'm really curious about viral communication and how to build viral communication. So I start taking that you got to build it into the narrative. You build it into the narrative and it's half the job. It's just half the job. So I start approaching different types of movements and organizations like this zeitgeist movement, which comes about, I think, in the early 20s and no, in the early 2000s, in the early 2000s, 2008, 2007, something like that. And basically, this is Peter Joseph. He puts together a video and he talks about three things. He talks about first, he talks about the creation of religion. Then he talks about the money system, and then he talks about 9/11. So I approached the group to participate in this network as a foundation of how challenging it is for governments. I mean, this is part of the problem that we're having. There's a granularization of thoughts and ideas where before we all used to watch the same series in the morning when we woke up to now being exposed to the internet and all these different thoughts. I was first of all interested in how that viral communication was created and how it engaged. I mean, the first movie, about 50 million people watched it. And second, how to connect with the right people, how to connect with auto transcendence. I know this is going to sound like crazy science fiction stuff. We're ending in 10 minutes. I'll just send you another link. And how the different cultures and the different governments are going to deal with these new narratives that are constructed into their existing narrative. Like just into the culture here and into the government in Argentina. I mean, always a lot of problems here. It's very unstable. We could talk, that's another conversation for another day, is how government and organizations were going to deal with this new narrative. And also connecting there, the biggest event we had was a Z Day in Hotel Bowen, which we organized, which was about 5,000 people went, just to give you an idea of the scope. And we had meetings and opened up chapters all across the country here. I didn't connect that much with the States at that point, but it was the same. It was like a replica of what was going on everywhere else. And the challenges in the internal communication to come to consensus, the people that didn't have any experience and just really were there to make noise, and the people that were really there to help out, and the people there that will create their bands and not work with any other people, the technocrats, the stasists, I mean, all just basically types of people. These are some categories that come from this incredible book. What's her name? But the book is called The Future and Its Enemies. It's really interesting. I can't remember. I've got their experts. I got their excerpts from the concept, and I've got all that information. But I got to dredge through my repository data that I collected over this time. But So basically, it's just connecting with the right people. And the idea of SBO United was an antenna as part of our company and our social initiative, um, was to put out an antenna and reach out, individuals such as yourself that are more evolved, that is easier to have a conversation, that we can talk about other things and start building in different new ways. So that in essence is, we understood that you were the audience. We had our first conversation was a way to sort of connect. We weren't ready with our narrative. Our narrative was still a little bit green. You were also advancing. You were in a particular time. I think it was right at the beginning of the pandemic. We had a lot of other pressing issues that really put a dent. I mean, like everybody knows, in everybody's life. Uh, so that was the idea, and now we're reconnecting after this time with a good, solid conversation and a huge potential to create value together. Cool. So that's a little bit, and what we were thinking for the monetization model is this is our narrative that we're putting out through SBO United. So with this content that we create, what we're thinking is the idea is we would launch the actual formal interview on SBO United, and it would be an SBO United content, which you can use on your site as well. I mean, we would like to have some distribution, so if that's cool with you. And then the reels and the takeaways we would select together, and I would use at SBO United and for my projects, and you could use for your projects as well. So that way I'll give you some leads. The only thing I ask is that we have a hashtag for SBO United and possibly for myself once I start opening my channels in exchange. But what I was thinking is we can go through all this content together and choose together what we decide to distribute and where we're going to distribute it. And then we have a bunch of content, a bunch of quality content. I think I'm still on the cutting edge as far as the conversation, as far as what we're looking at, what's going on. And also from the small business sector, which I have a lot of experience to drill down into that area and bring significant value. And also the good questions and the interview for you to generate some really quality takeaways for reels and all those to Twitter. I mean, there's just basically quotes. We can set up a podcast, just basically put the audio, and create clips and stuff like that. So I think there's just a whole bunch of content that we create. We see a lot of value there. So that's the idea at SBO United. We're going to be doing that with several people, and we're going to start growing that and setting up the YouTube channel. So that's where we're going in that direction. And then the second part is explore together what other. So we're talking about 3 potential areas for business instead of what was custom, what is the de facto standard for economic liberalism, reducing the risk to as little as possible as interaction. You're just a number, and who gives a shit as long as the money starts coming in and the transactions. And start looking from an entrepreneurial standpoint, look at 3 business opportunities. Look, your opportunities that we can work together on, the ones that we can work on together, which would be now SBO United in this video we're doing and the content we're creating, and our projects that we see value in us working together. So we see an ecosystem, and this is, we are acquiring risk, but we are acquiring risk smartly and we're managing it. So we're not just willy-nilly just acquiring risk. And the idea is like, okay, let's do one step at a time. But this first step is like, okay, let's envision 3. It doesn't have to be all 3 projects at the same time. I mean, let's envision the success of us coming together as the construct of 3 successful projects, which from where would give us a whole different view of how we can do business together, not through the smallest channel possible, through a straw to reduce risk. That's how a lot of people control you. And that's how a lot of business people want to control you. They just want to give you a little straw and put you far down underwater as you can, just so you're always struggling. I've encountered that management style a lot with mock management and a whole bunch of naughty stuff out there, which I'm sure you've encountered as well. So is to build healthier relationships and a bigger throughput in the channel. I mean, that's what we're saying. It's like and just to wrap everything up, we have a bigger throughput channel in between you and I. I mean, before, like when my father was growing up, it would be 30 days before I sent a letter on a ship to Portugal, and you sent me the reply would be 30 days. So, and it was written on expensive paper with super expensive equipment, super expensive. And that's where you wanted to manage risk as much as possible because you had no margin. There was no margin. But now with
Yeah, it
technology,
was maybe
go ahead.
even more the cost of time than the money even back then. No, like you say, if one letter is 3 months, you're gonna think about what's in there.
What's in there? What you're going to say? You want to be precise. There's no
Yeah.
smiley face. The smiley face, I think, was invented in 16,000, and we use it now a lot because the cost has gone down. But the cost was too high to send a smiley face and add any doubt to that narrative, which you needed to be highly focused because you needed to get your bricks, you needed to get your commodities, you needed to get your gold, your silver, whatever it was, your copper, your wood, whatever it was that you wanted to get to make things run. So right now, the throughput, the interpersonal throughput has evolved significantly, even from, like Dr. Strangelove, like the 60s, the president had the red phone to connect with the Kremlin. Come on. I mean, now we just hit a button and we can connect with the Kremlin. We can connect with anybody we want. So if they're going to listen to you or not, that's a whole different ballgame. That's a whole different ballgame. So the channel has changed, and we can take advantage of that for significant improvements to our lives and society in general. So just in a basic nutshell. So part of these interviews is to bring some day-to-day narrative. Very useful. This is not, very useful. It's just different stages. You're not highly successful already. You're talking with people that we will have very successful people as well, but we're also talking with people that are going through the day-to-day struggles of what owning your business is like and what living in today's age is like, as an educational piece, for learning and for personal and business growth. So that's a little bit where we're at with everything. I mean, obviously, we spent a lot in R&D. Any type of project that we can execute successfully. We say no a lot. We've been saying no a lot. Just there's not. These projects take time, and you have to work together. So it's not easy to find that. It's not easy to find that, and so, there's a higher cost. There's obviously a higher cost of doing business. This is not just about money, but it's about quality of life. So, but that cost is more than worth it though. And the returns are huge. So in a nutshell, that's where we're at.
Yeah, thanks. That's good. It's good even you go on a different subject, we kind of know what the reach of the conversation is, right? Like even it seems very wide, but they are actually parameters, right? So that's super good. Maybe we can plan in another call. I see this one is about to tell us. Oh.
Yeah, it's about to. What do you want me to send you another Zoom? How are you doing for time so that we can